asks.
I know. All right, today's dad joke, folks, while we're spinning up. Why shouldn't you trust stairs?
It's a good one. I don't know.
Because they're up to something. All right,
Got it.
folks. Hopefully we're live by now. Just going to check that. And
Yeah, we're on. Yeah,
we are. We're live here on Chicagoland Chats today, Monday, June 29th. Can't believe it's almost July when we started these back, in March?
Yep.
Crazy. Adam Serwinski here from Sidebar Insurance Solutions, your resource for home, auto, and business solution source. And to my, I believe it's my left on my screen at least, Butch Zemar. Butch, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about who you are, what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. I'm Butch Zemar from Elite Benefits. We help small and mid-size employers with their health insurance programs and worksite benefits.
So today, folks, we're going to have a little bit of a different one. It's holiday week, so a lot of people are kind of unplugging and maybe having a little different bit of a stretch. So it's just going to be the two of us today. We really wanted to kind of reach out and allow people to have an ask us anything kind of day. So if you are in the chats or you're in the live stream, feel free to pop in questions. We're more than happy to answer. But we wanted to also answer a number of the questions we get all the time from either guests or from people we engage with outside of the Chicagoland Chats. And so we thought we'd give those answers to you today as a way of providing value to our community. So I'm going to actually pose the first question to Butch so he can give his response, because I know we both have had to field this question. But
sure.
The number one question we get is, why are we doing this? Why are you in Chicagoland Chats? Why are you starting this process? And I'll let Butch start with his, and then I'll provide you with my thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's I think multiple reasons why we're doing this. Initially, it was kind of like to shed some light, leverage our networks that we've taken years to develop and shake hands, but to shed light for some of these other business owners, clients of ours, or other contacts, to give them a spotlight so that the people can figure out how they can still do business with them. Because then initially, and everybody can agree, we had no idea what to expect. Now we have a little bit more idea, but as phases open up, we still have the unknown. But initially, we didn't know how to do curbside. We didn't know how some businesses had to work remotely, and how can you be more productive, and what are some at-home productivity or things you could do to isolate your work versus home, and separate that. And then of course all the parents were doing homeschooling, so there was a lot of changes that were going on. And so I think at least my take on it is that we were trying to shed some light on how businesses can still go, and then use this video as a platform to share it among our networks, as well as the business owners' networks, so they can shed that or experience that. How do we do business going forward? How is this new thing going to be normal again?
Yeah, I think just to kind of piggyback a little what Butch is saying is, we were in a spot where everything was radically changing. There was a ton of disruption, and in that, it was all very much national. It was very much statewide, right? And so in the Chicagoland area, I don't feel like we had a real understanding of what was impacting the businesses we were dealing with, the ones that invested in our community, how we could engage with them, that they were still open, and how you were going to be able to stay connected with them, how you were going to be able to keep them in business as a local vendor or local business, because those businesses are much harder to manage during the lean times than the big ones who may have reserves or different abilities to get credit, et cetera. The small business, your neighbors, your friends, needed a little bit of help. And our goal was really to bring them on here and allow them to have some time to talk about how you could still engage with their business, provide you some value about why it was important to work with somebody with their level of expertise, with their knowledge, and how it would make sure, hopefully on the backside of this, as we head hopefully towards that in the coming weeks, and we even start seeing loosening up, like how they can get them to that point where we could, return to them and really support them. Because like I said, I mean, the small businesses are really getting hammered here, whether it's a commercial real estate business, or if it's an attorney who's got to change the way they're doing things, or it's a dentist, or whatever it might be. We've had loads of guests, and hopefully they could also provide a little value to show you what they would be like to work with them on the back end. And that's really been the hope throughout this whole time. I don't think, Butch, I don't know about you, I haven't necessarily seen a single shred of business directly from these videos. And it's not a bad thing, And it's not what I'm asking for. So there have been some people who've been skeptical about why we're doing this. It's never been about the business. It's always been about trying to make sure our community was felt we were involved, being a part of that community, and wanting that community to be as robust and vibrant as we step out of this. Because we're all this is gonna change a lot of things going forward, and certainly changing things in the here and now. And those changes we wanted to have a discussion about. So that was really why I think. And Butch, to that, any point to that?
No, that's it. I mean, it's about paying it forward, right? So it gave us also an opportunity to shake hands with other people virtually. So we broadened our network per se, but it's definitely about paying it forward, helping these people out, and that was the major intent. It was just to broadcast some of these things that we didn't know. I mean, how are employees keeping our food safe? How are the employees staying safe? How can you keep customers safe? And so that was the biggest driver. And I think as we open up, it'll transition a little bit, but I still think it's going to be on the focus and spotlight of what's so unique about those businesses and what do they bring to the table that might be a little bit different than the next one, but also to provide value to the viewers, right? And so what are some tips that somebody can give to somebody could do right now to impact their business or their lives, and then of course maybe there will be a rate of return in the future for them. But it was more about just providing that value back to the community so that we could all prosper together when we pull out.
Yeah, the whole idea basically is a stronger together mentality that I think Butch and I have had long before this epidemic started or the pandemic started. And we tried to use in our community. We found this vehicle is a way of doing that. So I think we kind of talked a little bit through at least why we're doing this, what our hopes are for it in the future. We plan to continue it as we hopefully leave the pandemic, although it may change in some variety. But our hope is really
things could still change. I mean, when they're talking about some of the numbers and certain states are coming back, so we might move back to, what we were doing in March and April.
Right. And so we're going to try and be as responsive and as straightforward and honest and outright as possible. Look, our goal is to make sure our community is as strong as possible leaving this. We don't care. The other bigger stuff it'll handle itself. We're going to control what we can here in the local area and let you know about people and businesses and resources that you could take advantage of in the area. So I think we kind of have laid it all out. It's the tapestry of reasons we've done this. Hopefully you've enjoyed it thus far. Hopefully you've had it, taken something away from the videos, and let us know how we can do better. We're always open and we'd love to kind of hear it. Criticism's a tough pill to swallow at times, but it's also a necessary one for us to get better on this. So let us know if there's ways we get better, areas you want to hear from, guests you'd like to have on. We would be more than happy to have any guests possible. And thank you to Oak Lawn Chamber, Orland Park Chamber, Mokina Chamber, all groups that have given us now multiple guests and have been super invested in trying to help their local businesses take advantage of whatever we're able to create. So thanks to them.
Yep. And then also, you and I are connected with a lot of people out there. We are trying to make our way through and spotlighting even the networks we have, the clients we have. They're all important to us, but we're trying. It's 5 days a week, which I think is unusual for a video podcast to do. And it's really hard, especially when we're not making money on the chat itself. And so the breakout time for it, and then we're limited, right? So we're thankful for the chambers to feed us some businesses and allows us to expand our network, but also we just don't have all the space, but we're trying to make it through at least. And I think Adam and I have talked about this. We're trying to make it through our list of clients to try to bring them on and give them that shine, but we're limited on how much time available. I mean, we're booking all the way through August now, and here we're not even in July. And so which is all positive. It's great things for the people that are coming on and we're interviewing, but it's just hard to get everybody in, and we're doing our best to try to work through that list.
Yeah, and just one more point to that. Also, we're trying to be respectful of other people and the fact that they're going through transition. So if we're trying to give people the space they need to adapt their business, to adapt what they're going through. And if they want to come on, it's as simple as an email to ask. So if you're feeling a little left out or you're frustrated by the fact that we haven't been on, this is the reason why is
Yep.
we're trying to be as respectful and as open and as direct with everyone. That look, this is a situation where we're trying to do our best to spotlight as many people as we can.
And
And in that end, we do want to provide value. So I don't want us to kind of belabor and talk about why we're doing this so
yep.
long, because we can provide value too. And so
Yep.
what I want to kind of get from Butch is Butch, can you talk a little about, we haven't really had a health and benefits person on. Talk a little bit about the
Coming up.
changes we've seen in your sector, what things people should know about from a health and insurance and benefits sector with regard to COVID. How are things going to change? What should they be thinking about? And especially as things reopen.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I'll segue a little bit what you're talking about, where you want to be mindful of other businesses. There was clients of mine that I called and said, "Hey, do you need help? Like, do you need HR resources? Do you need some language of how to do things?" And I would say almost every single one of those phone calls said, "Hey, no, I think we're good," or "Hey, can you one piece?" Right? It wasn't a whole lot. They were busy with their blinders on, trying to figure out how they're going to conduct business, keep doors open, keep employees employed, and then how to do it safely. And so the same thing from an HR perspective. There are bullet points that we have to go through in certain settings to make sure that everybody's safe, to meet all the guidelines. But they're not difficult, but we do need to adapt to those. And I think as businesses start to open up, they're going to have to know what those are. And it's not like the COVID police is going to come knocking on their door and making sure the desks are 6 feet apart, but there's going to be a sense of comfort for their employees as well. Some employees are not going to be concerned about this whatsoever, and then there's going to be some that are very overly concerned. Like, they're even nervous about going to work. They're worried about leaving their house. They're worried about even walking around the block and running into people and getting too close to people. And so you're going to have some mix. I know somebody had mentioned this to me recently. There's three types of people with this. So there's ones that are acting like nothing ever happened. And then they're on the other side, where people are worried about this pandemic. What if the numbers are true? What if it's really worse than what they're indicating? Maybe there's going to be a bigger wave coming that we have no idea. And then there's the people in the middle that are trying to be respectful on both sides. They're not really sure, or they are sure to a certain degree, but they're trying to balance both sides to make sure everybody's happy and keep people comfortable. Because there's people that claim they get offended when you do wear a mask, and then there's the opposite, where people are offended when you don't. And so in the workplace, those are some concerns that we have to address in an HR perspective. As far as benefits and claims, there's still data that's not been published yet. There's claim activity going in, obviously, for COVID, but we haven't seen anything earth-shattering. There are some special guidelines as far as furlough and bringing employees back, and how those benefits actually work. And then, of course, some businesses are foregoing premiums because they can't afford it. There's not enough business coming in. So the fortunate part is insurance companies are actually given some leeway with those payments, just to try to buy them some time. It's not really a furlough, a premium, because it's the type of insurance model that it is. They have to insure for that 30-day period, so they need to collect premiums for it. If you end up in the hospital, they can't forego the premium and still pay the claim. Whereas like a mortgage company, they could tack the payment, so what they're going to get their payments on the back end, it's not a huge deal for many of them, because they're still going to collect that principal and interest. Whereas in the health insurance world, they have to pay the claim, which means they have to bring that premium payment in. And so as far as benefits and administration, there's not a whole lot of changes at this point, other than since we're doing a lot more remote working. There's online platforms that are moving to a lot of paperless societies, really coming into tuition, and really getting put in the workplace, because employees are not coming in the office. So how do you ask them to print out an application to fill it out on their own, which is probably a good push for our industry. Most of my competition, if you want to call it, or just my peers in the industry, a lot of them are still doing paper, and it can be a several hundred employee group, and they're still doing paper. So there's some good things, but I don't want to take up all the talking on it, but there's definitely some changes, but not directly immediate or impacting all businesses. It's going to impact some, but not others.
Gotcha. Well, I'll kind of reiterate the question then for myself. I mean,
Yeah,
just to give people an understanding, there's really kind of two sectors we work that I operate in. So I'm working obviously in the home and the auto space as well as in the business sector. So first, for the majority of people, their main concern is with their home and their auto insurance. And what we've seen is in the home and auto insurance, the change has really been in the lack of driving. People have been ramping down the amount of driving they're doing. There's not as much movement. And as a result, claims have actually, I haven't seen the formal numbers come out, but claims should be down, right? Because claims and auto claims are particularly a function of usage. And so you've seen a number of carriers that have put out rebate programs or that they'll be refunding, and that may continue, but it's going to be lessening with the reopening. I would just prepare everyone that you may have seen those refunds already. And for most people that I'm getting feedback from, it's disappointing because they feel like they're told 15% and they expect 15% of their entire bill. And it's really only 15% of 2 months. For most carriers, that's what they've been doing, or a flat rate, $50, whatever it might be. So it's important to keep in mind that these were never intended really to be, life-altering changes to your policy. But it is meant to be a little bit of a nice thing that you can kind of bank on. So if you receive $50, you probably are on the high end of the refunds. Most refunds were between 30 and $40. And so it's that, and then usually a lot of people, if you're paying monthly, that savings has been spread out amongst the months. So you're seeing like a $5 discount or a $6 discount for the rest of the year. So but to keep things in perspective, it was never intended to be, the life-changing. It was meant to be something nice that they acknowledge. In fact, you may have been driving less, and so they were going to give you some refund. If you do want to make sure, if you anticipate that you're going to continue not driving or you're going to keep in quarantine for a long period, talk to your agent about potentially ramping down the number of miles that you have on their vehicles. Usage is, again, a function of claims. Just understand that if you ramp down the mileage and you don't get, and they will audit that. They'll ask you to tell you what's your odometer now, what's your odometer then. And if they find out you're driving more than you anticipate and you misled them, they may collect more premium. And so just make knowledge or informed decisions on whether you wanted to take those steps. So on the personal line side, just really the focus has been on those auto rebates as far as the COVID change. The other thing I tell you is you're around your house more. And there's been a number of storms, so there's been a little bit of uptick in water claims and issues with backyard pools and stuff like that. It's important to talk to your agent if you're going to put in backyard pools or you're going to buy a new dog, if you're going to do things like that and make changes. Update your agent on that because it can affect your policy. It can be whether you have a fence in your backyard, whether you have what type or breed of dog you're thinking about can affect your policy. So it's important to you may not think about it in the moment, but it's important to at least be cognizant of that could change your policies. I know my family got a new dog during COVID. And obviously their agent is just a terrible lout who didn't respond to them. And by that, I mean myself. Just kidding. But yeah, we had to look at that. We had to take it out to the carrier and make sure that the breed was covered, stuff like that. So it's important to remember that.
Yeah, certain breeds are not covered.
Certain breeds are not covered depending on the carrier. So it's important to remember that. And as far as on the commercial side, I think it's more reinforcement of good practices. So the 3 areas we're seeing, if you're a business owner, and there are really 3 areas you need to think about. The first is your general liability policy. There's a couple claims that have already been pending against, like, for instance, the cruise lines when they were on the ships and they weren't protecting, the people are alleging they didn't protect them from COVID on those cruise line ships. There's also liability claims if people go into your place of business, if they go into your association or whatever, and they claim that they were infected in those common shared spaces. There's no real understanding right now, though, if that's going to be successful or if they're going to be valid. There are 2 claims in Illinois for the 2 claim workers in Evergreen Park that passed away as a result of COVID while working. And so there's really uncertain. Those things are still working their way through. It's not certain as to how they're going to be handled. But it's good to make sure you have a liability policy in place for your business in the event that someone comes out. Because I think a lot of times my forecast would be it's going to be dependent on how sick the person gets. If they get really sick, they're on a ventilator, they got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in medical bills, or if they die, it's more likely a claim's going to be brought than if someone just had 14 days in their house. Mm-hmm. So you'll never know what that outcome's going to be from the start. The second area you want to think about, workers' compensation. Workers' compensation employers, particularly employees who had to continue working, these essential workers, may come up with claims, and the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission has already given and then rescinded a presumption that essential workers got sick at work if they developed COVID and they worked during the period. And although they've rescinded that, it may have tipped their hand. So just keep that in mind. Make sure your work comp is up to date. Make sure that your additional coverages, they oftentimes call it coverage B on the workers' comp form, which it talks about the third party employer liability is up to snuff, making sure it's as high as it possibly can be.
Sure.
Generally, it's $1 million, because not having it in place is going to leave you in trouble. And then lastly, if you own property or you do have something like along those lines, or if you're in a shared space situation, such as like a housing association, homeowners association, having directors and officers coverage, because you may lock down a pool or a gym or a shared space because of the COVID concerns, and then there may be a claim against the board for lack of enjoyment, and the fact that they paid money for this pool to be upkept, they paid money for a gym to be upkept, and they weren't able to benefit from it, or they're going to try and withhold that money from the association. And so it could lead to a lot of action against board members. And
Yeah,
so
sure.
having directors and officers coverage in place that's adequate and that doesn't exclude those type of claims is going to be an important thing to think about. So those are the 3 areas in commercial insurance I would think must be touched on. It's really focused on the property and whether on the ownership of the property, where the transmission takes place. And ultimately, you just got to prove where the transmission took place. Where'd you get sick? How do you backtrack that? Are you going to do genetic testing on the virus? Are you going to do contact testing? Is that going to be exclusive to find the only place? So it's really uncertain as far as how those things are going to be proven. And as a result, we don't really know how the insurance is going to handle it.
Yeah, good tips. I think those are all important. Even before this, they were important, but even more so now.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, Adam. A question did come in, and I'll ask you first, Adam. So what are the biggest things both of us have learned during this pandemic, personal and professionally? So you can take that one first.
So I think the first thing I would put out there is the thing that comes to mind first is the importance of grace, right? So what I mean by grace is to be understanding, empathy, that somebody else maybe, like you talked about earlier, may deal differently with this pandemic than others. And that doesn't mean that we just kind of let everything slide and everyone gets to do whatever they want. But what it means is that we take a step back from judging one another based on what they're doing. You know, if a person's wearing a mask, it's not because they may be going home to a kid who has an immune disorder, or they may be going home, or that gets aggravated by other people not wearing masks because that's an exposure to them. Or if you go to a party and someone's standing off or won't come because of it, it's not because they don't like you. It's not because they don't think you're clean or your house is clean. It's because they don't know what is going to happen. And having understanding for that. And when it comes to business owners and even vendors you're working with, like the same holds true. We are all humans first. And I think when I'm a self-driven person. I'm an entrepreneur who wants to build his own business and is hard charging and wants to see it grow. But at times that can lead to people being a little more less understanding for others. And so what I've tried to do a lot more during this whole pandemic is just be a lot more understanding, a lot more, and to understand not only my own restrictions, but also other people's restrictions and comfort levels, and just measuring that against, does what they're doing really impact others? And if not, okay, maybe I'm understanding. But if it does, then I can see a little bit less understanding, be a little less graceful about it. But I think grace is an important part, and reminding that we're all in this together. This is truly a shared experience, right? Like, if one person is still sick with it, they can still transmit it to me and to somebody I care about. And so we have to be mindful and cognizant of that. And so I tried to just reinforce like grace and understanding for people that are around us. And if we all share in that, hopefully we'll get to a place that we'll all take care of ourselves and each other well enough that we can get rid of this thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And Butch, you?
I mean, pretty much almost the same thing. I mean, one big thing I think that I notice is a lot of these, like on the business side of things, a lot of the businesses are going through the same thing, right? And so collaboration on the same issues, how do we conduct business? What is working? What is not working? I think that's one thing I learned, where there was a lot more in common than we actually, at least I originally thought. I knew it was going to be impacted, but I thought everybody was going to be impacted a little bit differently. And maybe that's more so on the personal side, where, like we had already discussed, like certain people view this differently than others, and have to be respectful in both manners. And then we're in a different world today. I mean, you walk down the street, even if you're going for a walk and you see some people wearing a mask, that would not have been normal 4 months ago, right? And so, and some people want those masks on, and some people want that space, and other people don't care. So, I think we have to be a little humble, and of course, not take things so much for granted, right? And so, I know in the beginning, and this is for me personally, where I got so busy with the busy work of just grinding it out, and since we weren't leaving, and so I was working from home, it just seemed like it was constant grind all day long, and it seemed like it would never go away. And so for several weeks, like I would work until late and I would start early, and so I had to learn how to restructure and take those breaks. Otherwise, you just get burnt out, or not even burnt out, you just get kind of exhausted during the whole thing.
Yeah, I think, like I said, like you going through that itself, like being understanding to people, there is a ton of disruption going on in everyone's world.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a fable that I love to share with people a lot of times. Back, and this is going to get esoteric and I apologize for it, but back in the day, Napoleon wanted to know how much pain a man could tolerate so that he could push people. And so he sent a surgeon out to talk about that. And the surgeon came back and asked, okay, and Napoleon asked, how much pain can a person tolerate? And they said, the only pain a person can tolerate is someone else's, was the surgeon's response, right? So we are all going through this, but if you put yourself in someone else's shoes and allow yourself to get past this, I'm going to tolerate someone else's displeasure, someone else's pain, or someone else's frustration because it's not my own, this is going to be a lot harder of a life time to go through. And so if we can be a little more gracious and try and understand what other people are going through and try and not necessarily internalize it, you don't have to put yourself in everybody's shoes. That wouldn't be healthy. But I think it's important to also be a little bit more understanding about what they may be going through and what their life's been like these past 100 days, right? Because I mean, March feels like eons ago right now.
Yes, it does.
As we head into July, but I mean, it's a blink of an eye in our lifetimes. Hopefully.
That's right. That's right. And then hopefully we could take a golden nugget from this, right? And so there's a lot of lessons both on national level as well as local. And I think it's brought a lot of the communities together. And that's what we're trying to do with the chambers too, is bring those communities together, be able to find a way so they can connect still going forward. And I tell you, back in January, to get somebody on a Zoom call was probably like pulling teeth. And now it seems like anybody that's asking for a meeting, it's very common knowledge and the expertise behind it. We got past all the make sure you know what the background is, even though I have folds in my brick, but but
still
also,
love it, man.
Yeah,
going up in the yeah.
Yeah, or even just like just things in the background, what can be said. Some people forget that they're even on a video. They just forget. So now I think there's a lot more common knowledge, a lot more professional, a lot more easygoing. I mean, come on, you're drinking wine, you're having wine parties on Zoom calls now. Yeah,
which I'm drinking coffee. You didn't catch me with wine today.
Yeah, well, one day, right? One day we'll have a drink party.
Right.
Yeah. So,
definitely.
So for sure, I think we're on the right path. Just giving back. Our focus is just to put back to the community. Like we already said, neither one of us has generated revenue directly from this, but it's created friendships, right? And so there's people that now I jump onto other chamber events on a Zoom call or other connections, and there's a connection there. Like, Butch, I seen you on those chats, right? And so it's just another way to connect with people is the way I see it. And it's definitely, and that in itself, I think is rewarding of shaking hands and getting to know people virtually. And hopefully we'll be able to get together here in the near future and make those connections stronger.
That's the goal, right? Absolutely. Yep. So, hey, we're coming up on our half-hour mark. We were a little bit late getting on, but we want to thank everyone for tuning in today. If you sat through it, listened to us ramble without really a guest. Yeah. But hopefully you took some value away. You understood a little bit more about Butch and I. I know we try not to talk too much about ourselves on the videos because it's really about spotlighting the community and focusing on the guests and focusing on the value and how they can deliver it. So thanks again, everyone out there for watching and making it what it is so far. Really
Yes.
grateful for it all. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy as we head towards July. Just to give you an idea for the rest of the week, we will be on tomorrow with a guest. I think we got Wednesday with a guest. Thursday and
Yep.
Friday, we will not be here due to the holiday. But we look forward to hanging out with everybody else the rest of this week. And if we don't see
Yep.
you again, have a great holiday and look forward to seeing you in the weeks to come.
Great. And we appreciate the feedback. So
Yeah.
anything you have to email in or send a message. Thanks everybody for sharing the content and being part of the group.
Yeah, it's really been overwhelming. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate it. We wouldn't really keep doing this if you guys didn't give us some feedback and positivity. So we really appreciate you, and have a great rest of your week or rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you guys. Yep.
Bye-bye.